everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Ask an Expert. I am so overjoyed to be joined by the wonderful Andrew Lustig, who we just released his first lessons on the Ride IQ app today. So, you guys are going to be hearing a lot from Andrew. Andrew, I mean, I'm sure you guys all know who he is already, but he is an incredible hunter, rider, trainer, and judge. And I'm just excited to learn from him this evening because we've kind of started learning about the hunter industry in the last couple months, and Andrew has really been our mentor through all of that. And I'm just excited to dive more into it. But before we do that, Andrew, thank you for joining us.
Oh, I am so honored to be on your podcast. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, we're thrilled to have you here. And I mean, before we get started, if you're attending live, as always, feel free to put any questions that you have for Andrew in the chat, and I will relay those over to him. And then let's kind of get started with learning a bit more about you, Andrew, and then we'll dive into the member questions that we've received. Andrew, do you mind giving us a bit of background on yourself and just sharing some career highlights?
Sure. I'm always, whenever I'm asked about my career, I always like to go back to my mentors in the sport. And I think that's so important. And I think, not to be critical of the younger generation, but sometimes they don't, not all, but some younger people don't like to think about the history of what's happening in our sport. And so I want to go back to how I learned in this industry. And I was very, very lucky to live in a great part of the country. And when I grew up, we didn't have the benefits of Ride IQ and internet and things where you could read all this amazing stuff online and get these amazing lessons through your website. And so you really had to be born in the right parts of the world to be exposed to great trainers. And I really had a diverse education that has suited me well. And I'd like to shout out some of that. My first great trainer was actually started out in the hunters and jumpers, but people don't know her as a hunter and jumper trainer. She's a world famous um, 3-day rider. Her name was, she unfortunately died recently, about 10 years ago, but uh, of cancer. Her name was Karen Stives. She won a gold medal and a silver medal in 3-day. And exciting for me when I was, 14 years old, she changed from riding hunters, which I was, and jumpers, and she moved on to 3-day. And she didn't know anything about dressage. So she went to Germany and she learned from the greatest trainer in the world at the time, Willie Schulteis. And then um, through her going to Germany, I was introduced to a lot of the great German riders and who came to visit her in Dover, Massachusetts. One of them being Anne Catherine Lisenhoff, who became a friend of mine at the time. And Anne Catherine Lisenhoff, you might know, owned Totalis, the greatest dressage horse in the world has ever seen, probably. And so through them, I was able to learn this amazing amount of flat work that was really new in the early '70s, mid '70s. We didn't have much dressage at all in the U.S., and so I was exposed to that at a young age. And then I went to the one of the greatest hunter people in the country, and their names, and people don't know this name as well, but her name was Marion Hulick, and the Hulicks had all the very best hunters, and we were champion at when we go to Madison Square Garden, the barn was literally champion in all the hunter division George Morris's riders, maybe in the junior divisions, but and the equitation. But other than that, in the first years and the confirmations and the regular workings, which is now called high performance, uh, we were champion in all those divisions. So I had that great exposure in the hunter world, and then of course my mentor that I'm most proud of claiming is George Morris, and I learned so much of my flat work and jumping through him. Later, I've judged, most of the great American hunter horse shows. Um, I've had two horses that were horse of the year. Um, Monday Morning and Conversation piece, very famous hunters. I have had lots of famous horses, and my students have been champion in most every major East Coast competition that you can name. So enough about me. But that's
I mean,
sort of a
that
short.
background and that resume is so immensely impressive, Andrew. Like you're forced to be reckoned with, and we're just lucky to learn from you. So thank you for taking the time.
I never.
Um,
That's the part I don't like talking about. But I was sort of like tooting your own horn. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, it's super interesting for us to learn
Yeah.
more about you. So thank you for sharing. Can
Okay.
you, as a next step, can you tell us a bit about the Kristen Barron Hunt team tour that you started this year and what your vision for this event is?
Well, my vision was very simple. I'm again talking about history. I became very upset that we've lost a lot of our great hunter shows. This goes back a long time, but we lost Madison Square Garden. And then we lost the Washington International. Then Harrisburg went from being a one ring show where everybody can sit and watch to a two ring show. And I don't need to get into it, but that then negates the making it special. And so those were our three indoor shows. And those were the shows that everyone worked for. And they're gone. So we had that. And those are gone. So I started the Kristen Barron class so that hunter riders would have um, a place where they could really be featured. They could really be featured again, when they could have a class that gave really large amounts of prize money, and it's also makes a lot of prize money, made a lot of money for charity, and that's really where I got the idea. And can I talk a little bit more about the idea?
Yeah, tell us what it is.
So this is how it's unique. It's the first time ever there's been a team approach to showing hunters. It's a professional, it's a junior, and it's an amateur, and they combine as a team, and they show at 3'3". And the course for the hunters, it has both the regular classic round and a handy round. And there was sort of my idea was to, give a lot of money to the hunters, have a place where hunters can be featured. But also, my idea was to raise a lot of money for charity. And while we're doing all that, to throw a great party at the same time, sort of like the Europeans do. Like, people can come to the party and join the party, or they don't even have to look in the ring, and the like the dads can enjoy the party. So there's so many aspects to it, and I could talk about it for an hour, but again, I know we have other things we want to talk about. But those are the major features of the class. And
It's really
we
interesting.
started this year in Wellington, and now we're doing our next competition at the Hamptons this summer, the end of August, August 29th. And we're in talks with other of the iconic horse shows across the country, and to start featuring the class at the very major horse shows.
It's so cool. And Jessa and I had the pleasure of attending the first one this year in Wellington. And it was an incredible, like, event that was put on. It was not only was it this really cool like formal party, it was a fundraiser for the Boys and Girls Club, and then the show itself, like the competition, was really cool because all three members of the team, they trot in the ring together, and then each person, while the other two wait, do their round, and then the next person goes, and then the next person goes, and the team leaves the ring together. And it's like just like a really unique opportunity for these junior riders and these amateur riders to go into the ring with their professional, and to be competing alongside them. And they got to like stand on a podium at the end once like the top three finishing teams. And it was just like it felt kind of like NAJR and NAJYRC, like the young riders, where it's like you've really like it really feels like you're kind of like in this like Olympic setting. And it was really, really cool to attend. And that was just the first one. So just imagining what these next ones are going to look like. It's really cool, the kind of energy that you're trying to bring back into the hunter sport.
Well, it's so funny that night, children say the darndest things, and she's, a teenager. She's a young lady already. But Stella Prop, who is the junior rider, they asked the media, Brianne Goutal was a professional who won. She's a fabulous rider, amazing credentials in the hunter and jumper world. And she won as a professional. And Grace Debney, who's a great rider, was the amateur. And Stella Prop, I mean, what an amazing team, was a junior. And I had always thought of having, a great party. So everyone had to dress up. I made it a formal attire. And then I thought having a great event, raising lots of money for charity. We gave 139,000 in prize money. I just wanted to make it a huge event, but I didn't think of this element, and I'll never forget this. So when the media asked Stella Prop what she thought of the event, she had tears in her eyes, and she said, I can't win the Hunter Spectacular, which is the big hunter $100,000 hunter class they have every year in Wellington. She said, I can't win an international derby like we have these derbies all over the country. She said, but because I was able to ride with my trainer and this great amateur rider, I now know what it feels like to win a major event. And I thought, oh, wow, I never thought of that. Here, like juniors and amateurs have the experience of winning a major event that they could never have without being on a team. And that really excited me and was an unforeseen benefit of what we're doing. And I
It's
just
so
have to say
cool.
one thing that's so important. Kristen Barron gave all the prize money and is giving all the prize money, donated all the prize money, which goes to charity. And very few people are willing to do that. So I really just have to have a shout out for Kristen, because it's really amazing for someone to have what my dream is. My dream is twofold. My dream is to improve the hunter industry and to give money back to charity. And Kristen Barron really has my dream also. It's both of our dreams now. And we have to thank her for what she's doing.
Yeah, it is incredibly generous, and it's amazing that you have that partner to help you go and execute on these, because it's really, it's really, really, really cool to see what you guys are doing, and I'm excited to continue to watch this tour kind of expand and grow over the next couple of years.
Well, we have, I don't want to, I don't want to jinx us, but we have a lot of really exciting things we're working on for the future, and we'll see how it progresses. But we
Yeah,
couldn't be more excited.
totally. So everybody, you're listening, definitely stay tuned for more updates on the Hunt Team tour, and follow them on social media to learn more.
And you can see
And
the whole class if you on YouTube. If you put the Kristen Barron Hunt Team Tour charity class. It comes up on YouTube if you'd like to watch it.
Yeah, and I think you were live streaming it, right? Are you planning to live stream future events?
All will be live streamed, and yeah, all will be live streamed, and we had commentators, and we I have a dream also of at the Hamptons. We're not 100% sure, but because we're working on it right now with the tech. But maybe you can help us with that because you're ride IQ. Maybe you really could. We want to be able to do something for the audience members, and that is, hunters are harder to understand for people than jumpers. Jumpers are so easy. You know how fast you go, and you don't knock over a jump. You're the winner. And hunters are more technical, and because of that, we want everyone to be able to have a podcast like this, and then we want to do commentary that really explains hunters, not just as commentary on the class, but explains what a cross canter is, what a good jumping horse is, what a good moving horse is. And people that don't know that much about hunters and have come, for the party, they can actually follow along and start to enjoy the beauty of hunters.
Absolutely. It is so important to educate your audience, and it does help with appreciation for what they're watching. I've definitely, as you've taught me about all the various, I mean, I'm just kind of scratching the surface of my knowledge, but you've taught me so much, and it's really increased my appreciation for the athletes and the sportsmanship involved with hunters.
Yes, I mean, there's so much to it. And part of what I also want to do with this class is get back to our roots a little bit more. We used to gallop a little bit more, and it used to be a little bit more exciting, the pace. And we're working on bringing that back. And I think a lot of the riders are excited about that.
Super, super cool. Well,
Again,
thank you for
I said
sharing.
this is like, patting myself on the back. Like when you asked me about my history of my riding and stuff, I could talk about it for an hour, but I don't want to eat up your whole podcast on just
No,
this.
it's super. We love to learn about it. So thank you for sharing about your kind of your vision for it and what brought you to do it, and kind of how you're hoping it to how you hope it evolves over the next couple of years. It's really great for us to better understand that. But I think it is a good opportunity for us to transition into a bit more about your training philosophies and techniques. So I think a good place for us to start would be just having you describe your training philosophy and your approach that has led to the success that you've had with your students and your horses.
Well, again, I'll have to go back to my mentors, and the old horsemen really took time to train their horses. And I hesitate to be critical of our current system, but our current system, unfortunately, and we all have less time. As a society, we have so much less time. The kids have less time. So I understand. So please don't take anything I'm saying the wrong way. But when you talk about what's important in training, to me, educating the horse is so important. And what's being done wrong in the hunter world is exhausting the horses so that they are compliant rather than a horse that's submissive to the aids. And submissive, I hesitate to even use, my dog is not being submissive right now, he's barking. Mango. So a horse that's submissive to the aids, I don't mean that he's being forced to give in. I mean that when a horse is educated, they're submissive to the aids because it feels right, because they're trained properly. So again, every subject you've asked me about, I could talk for hours. But when you asked me about training, riding was developed by people who went to war. You know this, right?
Correct.
So,
Yes.
correct. So, when you went to war, this is before they had guns, and they rode with one hand, and the other hand they had a spear. And the horse, they didn't want to fight the horse to turn left, to turn right, to spin around, to gallop, to halt, to jump a stone wall. They wanted to fight the other guy. So they developed training. And in that training, they taught self carriage. And people don't really understand what self carriage is. And the reason why horses do self carriage is because it feels better for them. When a horse isn't trained, they think of it this way: if you're a horse and someone weighs 200 pounds and they sit on your back, you're not going to strengthen your core and round your back and carry your rider. You're going to arch your back and you're going to stab the ground with your hind legs. You're not going to bend your hocks and bend your stifles. So, through thousands of years of figuring this out, they learned that when the horse became submissive to the rider, when he bent his hind leg, when he engaged his hind leg, when he relaxed his back, it became easier for the horse. And that's what self carriage is. A horse goes into self carriage not because they sit around at night talking to each other in the barn going, I like my rider. They're nice. I think I'm going to do self carriage for them tomorrow. I think what they sit around in the barn, if they do speak to each other, they're like, we'd like to get some more hay. I don't think they sit around saying they're going to do self carriage. A horse does self carriage because it feels better for them. It's easier for them to carry us, to balance us when they're moving properly. And when a horse is educated and moving properly, you don't have to exhaust the horse to get him to be compliant. So that's sort of the foundation of what I teach. And unfortunately, it's a little bit of a dying art. Even in dressage, unfortunately, things are too manufactured. Horses are too overflexed. Horses are are not ridden fluidly enough in dressage anymore. If you watch the old videos from the 40s and 50s and watch dressage horses today, they're so much more confined. And hunters too. I don't mean to, sling sling arrows at dressage horses. It's in all of our disciplines. And a horse with self carriage and moving in a natural frame is a beautiful horse that's content.
Absolutely. One thing I like my one of my big takeaways from watching you ride and also listening to your ride IQ lessons is you're a really clear communicator with your horses. You ask and you give, and then you go forward and you collect and then you let them go forward. And if you're doing lateral work, you're going to also do longitudinal work, and you're really just like you're very thoughtful about the kind of the like back and forth that you're having with your horse. And it the horses that you were riding just seemed really relaxed, and they didn't seem worried because they understood what you were asking of them, and they knew that you were going to be fair, which I thought was really just like a really cool thing to see, and a really
That
great aspect of your
that
riding.
that's contentment. And everyone knows, and this is what people don't get. It's all about the horse's back. Like every trainer knows, get the horse's hind end underneath him, get the horse's hind end underneath him. And that's correct. But why you're getting the horse's hind end underneath them and why you're getting the horse to bend their hocks and bend their stifles instead of stab is so that the horse relaxes his back. And by riding a horse forward and then collected, or a lateral movement and then forward, that gets the horse bending their hind legs, which gets the horses to relax the back. When they relax the back, they stop fighting against the rider, and their horse becomes content, and then the horse goes into self carriage. And that's what's lost today. And it couldn't be lost in war because they didn't have time to manipulate the horse. The horse had to help the rider. And the horse is only going to help the rider when the horse is comfortable. And I want to say something even more. You know, the gift to the horse is to move forward. The reward to the horse is to move forward. And when a horse learns self carriage, you're really giving the horse a gift of a lifetime, because when a horse continually, okay, imagine you're running track and every day you go out and every day you don't bend your knees and your hips and you're tight, you're going to break down. I pride myself that my horses come back year after year after year, and it's because they're not fighting me, they're moving correctly. If a horse has to come out and fight their rider, it's just like a person running on pavement with stiff legs. You're going to break down. So, what we're doing is we're doing it for the horses. We're giving them a gift. We're giving them a place in the world where they can really last and have a long career and not be turned out in some pasture where they're not taken care of.
Absolutely.
We're doing it
Yeah,
for
I
the
love
love of
that.
the animal. We're doing it for the
Totally.
love of the animal.
That's why we do this. Yeah, I think it can be easy to lose sight of that sometimes, but that's the
My
point of this.
yes, we do it for our own ego as opposed to the love of the animals. And I always say to young professionals, there's a lot of other professions where you can make money, probably a lot more money. And if you're not doing this for the love of the horse, then you're in the wrong business. Period. Full
Absolutely.
full stop. Full stop. I don't
Totally.
care, you know, how many gold medals, but the people who win the gold medals are doing it. Those few people that do win gold medals are doing it correctly and do also have great mentors. And it's a lot of us, a lot of people. What I want to say is, and this is being forgotten, is every day that I go out and are with my horses, I want to learn something. And no matter if you are McLean Ward or Anki, what's her last name in Germany? The great dressage rider. I can't think of it right now. Unless you're the greatest dressage rider or McLean Ward or Ken Farrington, every day we have something to learn. And that's what's so great about our sport, that we're always learning. So read a book, uh, go on the internet, watch a YouTube video, get on Ride IQ and listen to lessons. That's the great thing about what we do. We're always learning, no matter how great of a rider we are, or how many accolades, or how many ribbons, or how many medals in Olympics we've won. We're always learning. And those people are the best.
Totally. It's a never-ending pursuit.
And that's
Which
what
makes
makes it
it
great. Are you there? I don't hear you. Hello, hello.
Can you hear me now?
Now I can.
Sorry, my mic just sometimes decides to stop working.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna transition us over to your
I thought you fired me. I said something wrong.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm tapping out.
Okay.
Okay. What are the key criteria you look for when judging a hunter competition?
Wow. You mean rider or horse? Well, that's an interesting
I guess
question too. I'll
both.
answer my own question. So when I'm judging hunters, you're judging the emphasis that you're judging is on the horse. Of course, the rider counts a lot, but the emphasis is on the horse. When I'm judging equitation, and I know we're not talking about equitation today, but just for example, when I'm judging equitation, the emphasis is on the rider. But of course, you're judging the horse. We're a pair. You can't separate the two. But I like to use the word emphasis. So you're asking me what qualities I look for in a hunter. And that's a great question. All of your questions are great, but that's a particularly great question. And sometimes when people hear this, they're going to take it the wrong way, like it's a snooty thing that I'm saying, but I'm going to explain why it's not. Everyone who comes into my ring is not equal. Don't anyone get upset. Everyone needs to be judged fairly, but everyone who comes into the ring is not equal. Now, that does not mean like the person who sponsors the horse show gets more points. That has nothing to do with what I'm saying. Hear me out. If a great horse comes into the ring, that horse gets bonus points because the emphasis is on the horse in the hunter world. And the reason why a great hunter judge gives bonus points to a great horse is simple. We want to educate people while we're judging. We want to educate them as to what horse is safe because a lot of people ride horses that aren't safe. We want to educate people about horses that are sound because a lot of people ride horses that aren't sound. So we're there judging, but we're there when you're judging, you're also trying to educate the people that you're judging. So when you have a horse of a higher quality, he's getting bonus points. Now, that doesn't answer your question. What do I look for? So let me tell you what I look for. But hopefully that answers your question as to why a great horse should get bonus points without sounding like I'm trying to be preferential to some sponsor of the horse show. That would be bad. Um, so, a great horse as a hunter has to have certain criteria. Um, so, let's start with the most important criteria um, length of stride. Now, why do you think one of the reasons why hunters were judged for length of stride? And a lot of people might not know that our lines, a line for a jumper doing 6 strides might be 84 feet, where a line for us might be 90 feet. So our lines are longer than jumpers. So why does a hunter have to have a long stride? Well, because when people went on hunts hundreds of years ago, the hunts would be very long. So a horse with a short stride would tire, wouldn't make it through the whole day. So a hunter had to have a long stride. What else did a hunter have to have? A hunter had to have scope. Now, scope is the ability to jump wide. And why do they have to have the ability to jump wide? Well, a lot of those stone walls they had to jump or ditches of water when they were jumping from um, one field to another or wide. And if a horse couldn't get across a wide jump, you'd land in the middle of it and be very dangerous. You don't want a horse landing on the middle of a stone wall. So, especially if you meet it from a far away distance. So, the horse has to have a length of stride. He has to have scope, the ability to jump wide. And there are some other criteria that are so important for a hunter. And the last one, which I'm not going to say quite yet, the last one I is aesthetic, and I'll explain the aesthetics in the end. But the next one is also um, for a physical reason, and that is quality of movement. So a horse that doesn't use too much knee action, a horse that's very straight in the knee, has conservation of movement. So when a horse bends their knee a lot, it's more energy than when a horse's knee is very straight. So that's called a good mover. We like a horse sort of that points their toes as they trot and canter. And that's very important in a hunter. And the last thing is aesthetics. And that's the horse has to be beautiful. And why does the horse have to be beautiful? That has to do with tradition. And I think tradition is important in anything, in any sport. And that was because when everybody went on their hunts, on their Sundays, when they went on their hunts, when they were hunting fox in England, it was a little bit of a status symbol to have a beautiful animal. And that stuck with us to this day. And those are the qualities I look for when I'm
That's
judging a
amazing.
hunter. The other quality from a rider's aspect is the rider's job, like I said, they're also being judged, is twofold. One, they should also have a beautiful style like the horse. They shouldn't be laying all over the neck like a lot of riders are doing these days. Sometimes I think the jumper riders have a better style than the hunter riders do these days. Um, but they should make the whole course, and this is very hard, and it makes jumper riders very nervous when they ride hunters. Our whole course has to match, so every jump matches the other. It never looks like we're speeding up or slowing down. Where everything is matching. Each jump is. I was giving my dog a little treat. Each jump is matching. So that is we have to jump 10 jumps and each one match another. A jumper rider can speed up quickly or slow down roughly, and it doesn't matter. Everything has to match. So those are all of the qualities I look for in judging a hunter.
It's so interesting, and I really appreciate how you can tie everything back to like the historical reason for it. It really drives home just like the importance of these foundations and understanding where these sports come from.
I feel
Um,
bad because we would bore everybody to death, but every question you give me is an hour long. But
it's
everyone would be
not
so bored, they
it's
would
not
shut us
boring at
off.
all.
But yeah.
It's super interesting, I promise. Okay, so Tara is wondering if is what you look for different when you judge a pro or open class versus an AMI class or a junior class?
Yes. Yes, I love that question. We give scores, and I'll give an 87 in a pro class and an 87 in an amateur class or a junior class, but it's a different 87. So I'm glad. Tell her I'm glad she asked that question. Hope she can hear me. So a professional's horse would be judged more on its raw athleticism, and a junior and amateur class, a horse will get points for its kindness a little bit more with me. So, yes, it is. And that's basically the difference right there. Um, if a horse is really well suited to a junior and amateur, they are going to get extra points because, like I said, safety is our number one concern. So, if a horse shows me that in a junior and amateur class, yeah, they get extra points.
I love that. Alexis, and I think you kind of covered this, but I want to make sure that you did. Alexis is asking about your thoughts on the type of movement that's winning the hacks these days and where you think it's trending in the future.
Wow, these questions are amazing. So, uh, one of the things I think they've forgotten about flat this. Well, there's this. I'm gonna add to the question a little bit. I mean, maybe we don't need to touch on that, or we can. It's up to you, Jess. So, one of the ways is how are the horse being ridden in the flat class, but that's not what she's asking. So, from a horse point of view, you know, I think it's very important, and what's been forgotten these days, that good movement and the horse pointing their toes is very important. But what they've forgotten a little bit is the horse's length of stride. So if a horse is pointing his toes but not covering a lot of ground, that should not be rewarded in a flat class. And a lot of times I see these horses that are beautiful and pointing their toes, but not covering the ground and winning, and that's incorrect. So I think we need to get back again to our history and and not forget that. But ask the question one more time so I answer it more thoroughly.
She said, "What type of movement is winning the hack these days, and where is it
Mhm.
trending in the future?"
Well, yes, that's what I said. Some of these short moving horses are winning, and trying to educate people away from that. Um, and where is it trending in the future? Um, I'm hoping we go back. I think I did answer the question. I'm hoping we go back to rewarding the horse that covers a lot of ground effortlessly.
Wonderful. Okay, so if we transition a bit over, we had a lot of questions on fashion for the rider, I guess, and of the horse. Um, Caitlin is asking about the current trends on horse and rider fashion, and anything that should be avoided for fashion choices.
That is a great. Oh, these questions, I love them. Okay, so I'm sort of dual minded on this. You know, we've ridden so long with navy blue coats and light tan breeches that it would be nice to see something a little different. Now, a few number of years ago, 10, 15 years ago, people tried to have light coats, and that I didn't like. But I think there's room for growth there. I think that our look has stagnated, and it would be really interesting if some top designers, I don't mean Ralph Lauren, I mean just young people with some great ideas, came up with some new looks for the hunter world that's very elegant. But let me caution that we don't want the look to overstate the horse. So we don't want it to be so obvious that it gets in the way. The beauty is always the horse, but there is some room
Totally.
for growth.
Yeah, I love that. Ashley, in a similar vein, is she's saying, I'd love to bring my young horse and my older, not very good at eventing eventer out to show in the local hunters, but all my tack is black. How big of a faux pas would it be to show up like this? Would it be considered disrespectful?"
Yes. Now, black is not good. We like the tack to be brown, and that goes just back to tradition.
Okay, good to
But if
know.
that's all she has and it's a local horse show, then I think she should use her black tack.
I
Now, if
think
she's
so.
at a top competition, that might count against her.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's very fair. Um, So the next question is, I mean, another question um, that we got is just related to your student success. Are there the qualities or skills that you instill in your students to help them achieve success in the ring?
Are there qualities?
Qualities and skills.
What are the qualities, or are there qualities?
Yeah. What are fair?
Well, we sort of have a joke that's not a joke. Ready? We have a rule at my barn. We have a rule that we have three rules. And this is sort of a joke, and then I'll get into the qualities. Here are our three rules. The first rule is have a good attitude. And, you know, I just read, again, we're always learning. I just read this whole study about the difference between, the gold medal winners and the people who are fifth and sixth. And they say the difference is not how much they learn or how much they study, but how positive they are thinkers. So I guess that was a great rule that I established. My second rule was always look fabulous. Have the best clothes, have the cleanest tack, have the shiniest boots, always be turned out. It's a horse show. The word show is in there. It's not a horse practice, it's a show. Let's make it a show. And I always say that those two things you can always control. And then the third rule is win. You can't always control that. But when you go back to the question, um, and I'm going to be doing this for your app, for your website, um, there's a technique that I've learned through the years, through mentors, to having a winning round when you ride hunters. And very few people know it. And if you learn to ride correctly and properly, using a whole technique, which would take more than an hour to describe, minimum, or it would take 6 hours. Um, yes, if you're technically correct, then, if you're technically correct and your horse is on the age, you're going to win. Is that the question?
That's the question. That's perfect. That's really
Okay.
helpful.
Okay.
Um,
In other words,
okay,
I can't
so
get into the whole technique, but yes, there is a technique that has to be learned, whether it's playing the piano or the violin or swimming or football. There's techniques to everything, and if you want to win in hunters, uh, you have to know that also. Stay tuned; it's going to be on your app.
yeah, amazing. I love that.
It's a tease. It's a tease.
It's perfect. Well,
It's a
we
true tease.
you
It's a true tease.
you mentioned kind of the what you are looking for when you're judging horses in the ring. Are there any mistakes or pitfalls you see frequently in the ring, and how do you recommend riders avoid them? It's like simple mistakes where you're like, oh, if you didn't do that, like you'd have the score would
Yes.
be so much better.
Well, you're going to have my pet peeve. Again, I'm old fashioned, and we used to gallop. And I hate when people are too slow in hunter classes. But I'm slowly bringing it back into fashion. But it's almost gotten to the point where um, you're rewarded for going slowly. And I'm really against that because we're boring enough as hunters. I mean, I don't think we're boring, but we're boring to the average person who doesn't understand horses. We're boring in that way. And if we go too slowly, we're make it more boring to the average person who doesn't understand horses. So we have to get back to the great galloping sport that we were. But I have a lot of other things. Again,
Yeah,
if you ask me a
tell
question,
us.
I could go on. I could
You
go
can keep
on.
going.
So, what are the other things? What are some of the other things I don't like?
Tell us.
Uh, a lot of the fashion also this days, and people don't seem to fall. And it's a tragedy that the judges aren't falling. It's flat jumping. And what these judges don't understand is flat jumping is unappealing. And just for people don't know what I mean by flat jumping means the horse doesn't spend a lot of time in the air. So, how do you know if the horse is spending a lot of time in the air? If the emphasis of the jump is up, that's correct. If the emphasis of the jump is down, that's incorrect. So, if you watch a horse jumping and you see the horse going down, down, down to the ground every time he jumps, that's flat jumping. If you watch a horse jump and the emphasis is like up and then down, that's correct jumping. Now, it's become the fashion that it's okay to pin horses at a very high level that are flat. That's never correct. It'll never be correct. And you really got me on something that drives me nuts. because you see so many judges giving huge scores for flat horses. Flat jumping is dangerous, and dangerous is never correct. So we the number one thing that I have to do every day when I teach is have my riders be safe. And under the best circumstances, your horses can be dangerous. So why put yourself in a bad circumstance? How many other things would you like me to talk about?
If there's other things that are really important to you, definitely feel free to share.
Those are the big two things, but there's many, many things. But go ahead.
Yeah.
We can ask. You could ask me other questions, or we can keep on this subject.
Amazing. Well, we can come back to it if we have time at the end.
Okay,
Because
that's what I
there
thought. We can.
are
We don't have to go an hour about that.
no, that's really helpful though to know like these little things to be looking out for
Those are
because
big,
and big things
slow,
to be looking
and
out
too
for.
flat.
Big
100
things.
people. That's part of getting back to the beginning of. That's why I started the Kristen Barron Hunt Team class to get away from that. To get.
Absolutely. And kind of on that same subject, Caitlin
Mhm.
is asking about the kind of the evolution of the hunter discipline. And I know you mentioned how these big events are no longer happening, and you listed a couple of them. She's asking, what is it in your opinion that's killing the hunter circuit outside of the East West Coast in Florida?
What is killing the hunters?
Yeah,
Mm,
if you agree with that statement,
I have to be able
even
to go to the horse show tomorrow, but I'm gonna say it. Ready? Drum roll. Bad judging. Sorry.
what
And
about it? What
and
about it makes it
can I get
bad?
myself in a little? No, I'm not gonna get myself into any more trouble than that. So judges need to educate themselves and not just follow each other blindly. Educate themselves, and then once they're educated, believe in themselves, and instead of just trying to go along with all their friends, judge what they know is correct. What happens is people spend a lot of money to go to a horse show. People spend a lot of money on a horse. People spend a great deal of time, and then they get to the horse show, and then they're judged poorly, and then they lose faith in hunters, and then they end up showing jumpers. And I don't blame them. So there's been a lot of good people have, for years, trying to educate judges. We have a lot of programs in the United States Equestrian Federation that really works on educating judges, and there are a lot of great programs that the United States Equestrian Federation and the Hunter Committee are doing. So I'm not critical of them. It all comes down to the individual. This can't be helped by an association, no matter how much they try. This can only be helped if people educate themselves and if people aren't afraid to buck the system and if people aren't afraid to study, learn, and to do what's right.
Yeah, I think that's really important, and that's true across sports. Like it's true of any sport
Dressage
that
too.
requires judging. Yeah. It
Yeah.
totally. It's really, really
Yeah.
important that we all continue to educate ourselves.
Yeah.
Um,
And not go
okay,
along with everybody else.
yeah,
Do what
totally.
you know is right.
What do you like, are there efforts that you make to ensure consistency and fairness when judging because it is a subjective kind of a subjective score that you're providing?
Yes. I mean, it's always hard because at the top end of the sport, we all know each other. And human nature is human nature. And for myself, it's almost harder sometimes to judge your very best friends because you don't want people to perceive you as being too nice to them. So sometimes you're meaner to them. And it's just, we're such a small world that you really have to focus on the performance and not the individual. And, not always it's not always the most famous rider horse that has to win. So you can't be afraid to let the underdog win and when they deserve to. And that's just human nature. That I mean that has nothing to do about educating. That just has to do about biases. And we all have bias. And that's something I always work on, trying not to have bias.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so we are here almost at the end of the hour. I don't know how this hour flew by so quickly, but I cannot thank you enough for sharing so much of your
Because I have a big
expertise.
mouth. I keep
It's
talking
it's
and talking.
amazing. It's so much fun. It makes it a blast to listen to. But as kind of a closing out question, I would love to hear from you about what you find the most rewarding about being a hunter, trainer, rider, and judge.
Well, it's going to get back to the animals again. There's nothing more rewarding to me than getting a young horse and or a rider. You can exchange. Okay, there's two things, I guess, and I'm gonna cry. So, I've taught a lot of young people, and my goal is to teach them as best to my ability as I can. And there's always, someone better than you, and I always like to say there's always someone, prettier and thinner or whatever the saying goes. There's always someone like that. But what I like to show my young riders is that I was really a positive influence in their life. And I think I've done that with most of my riders. And, I have riders that are were only 10 years younger than me when I started training them, and now they're in their 50s and they're still my friends. And so I hope I more than just taught them the art of riding hunters, that I, showed them, how they could be better people. And that's the most important thing with people. But I'm an animal lover and I almost love animals more than I love people. I'm saying all the wrong things here. And there's nothing more satisfying than taking a young horse and really, I take more time than everybody, and that can be frustrating for the people who have my owners sometimes. And really taking my time and really developing a great horse, and and whether my clients keep the horse or we sell him to somebody else, and seeing that horse become a huge success. So I guess it's the same for people and horses. It's just I almost love it more in the horses because I'm such an animal lover.
That's the best. I think that comes through too. It comes through with how, I mean, you have such a strong community around you and then of people, but also you have such a strong group of horses that you work with because your love for them really does come through in your riding and your training. But um Andrew, thank you so much. Like this was so much fun, and everybody who attended live and was chatting in the live feed, thank you so much. This was wonderful, and everyone who submitted questions, they were amazing. So, kind of to
Everyone
wrap
was
up here,
great. The questions were amazing.
yeah, thank you guys, and Andrew, I can't wait to continue working with you and expanding your library of lessons and your expertise on the Ride IQ app. But thank you for sharing your knowledge with us here tonight.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Have a good